Hi guys, Greg here again. This evening I'm going to be doing a little bit of work putting kerfs into some kerfing for a couple of guitars I'm building, and I figured I would share my process with you. Now I've seen the bandsaw and I've been through the bandsaw techniques, never made one of those slick little jigs that kind of mechanically moves everything along. I think those are so cool. Seen table saw techniques, I've seen people use radial arm saws. I'd probably actually go that direction if I had room for one in my shop. I can't believe I'm not buying another tool. Oh. Anyway, so what I've come up with is a little cradle system and a trim saw. So to get started tonight, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab, I've got a bundle of material here. I did some milling some time ago with basswood. I like basswood for linings. I don't worry about the grain orientation on it because it's a very homogeneous wood. It doesn't really require that much thinking for grain direction in my mind. Some other woods I would really consider it. Now these have been cut. You can see the style of kerfing that I like to use. Just milled it up on the bandsaw and then bundled it all up. It stays together, it's sturdy, it doesn't get damaged. As soon as I put the kerfing in it, it gets kind of weak. So I find that this lasts longer and stays together longer, and then I just kerf up about as much as I need when I need it. These still have, they're smooth on the glue surface right now, but the table saw side, the angled side is still a little bit rough. So the first thing I need to do is to smooth this out. I'm going to run it through my little drum sander. I love my little drum sander, the little homemade one. You'll see it in a minute here. I like it even better than my big Delta for stuff like this. It's just so much easier to use, and I don't know, that's just my preference. So what I have here is I've got 5 pieces of the kerfing because that's how much I can fit into my machine. And then I've got just a piece of scrap pine here with a cut in it, and you'll see in a little bit here where the kerfing fits in and gets leveled to the drum on the drum sander. So in a moment we'll be over at the drum sander. So here's my little drum sander. I built this quite some time ago, before I had any money to buy a real drum sander, and I think I use this more than I use my big Delta. It works wonderfully for this sort of thing. It simply has a hinge over on the far side here. You can see the table is loose and it just goes up and down. A piece of all thread down here going through a long nut and a little lock nut on the top. And you can adjust it up or down just by turning the all thread and then locking it down again. I have the jig set up at an angle to the drum sander so that as the drum sander spins around and pushes on the kerfing, it pushes it into the jig as opposed to away from the jig and then making an inaccurate cut. So I've got it set up at an angle, and now I'm going to adjust the depth. Here's an example of one of my pieces, and hey, it slides through there easily and isn't going to get sanded. So I'm going to undo the lock nut, give this maybe a half a turn, lock the lock nut down again. Hey, it's not going in there anymore. So before I get this thing started, I'm going to put my dust shroud on because I like to breathe. Now it's sanded most of it, but not all of it, so I know I need to take a little more cut. Nice and clean. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of them. And then I'm going to take it through the drum sander one more time on the little flat spot here and get it to the size that I want it to be as well. See you in a little bit. Well, I'm back. They're all nice and sanded and looking good. So now it's time to set up the machine to put the kerfs in them. It's a simple little cradle. Trim saw goes in it. This I've had for quite a few years. I've get the guard out of the way and show you the blade. I'm using an extremely fine tooth blade. It is just a steel blade. No need for carbide here. It is cross-cutting through basswood anyway. The kerf is bigger than the one. I use this similar arrangement for kerfing the frets in a fingerboard. But this blade's a little bit wider so that the distance between the individual tentillones will still close up and not touch as it bends through a tight radius like in an upper bout or a cutaway. So I've got to adjust the depth of the blade to leave just the right amount at the bottom of the kerfing. So to do that, what I've got is a couple of pieces of scrap veneer here. I'm going to slide these two pieces in to the machine, into the jig. I'm going to loosen my depth adjustment and raise it up. I'm put my saw on the jig, and I'm going to lower this down just until it's touching, just until it's hitting those veneers. Now if I'm sitting on the tip of a tooth, it's going to be a little bit of a shallower cut. If I'm sitting between two teeth, it's going to be a little bit of a deeper cut. So I've chosen at this point to be sitting on top of the tooth. That way I can make a small downward adjustment if I need to in a minute. Now before I throw material that I want to keep into the machine, I'm going to grab myself a piece of scrap. Now, through this whole operation you're going to see me doing what's called a climb cut. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's basically using a tool in the most unsafe manner according to its design. A saw like this you would normally push through this direction, working against the natural tendency of the blade to push the saw towards you. You're in the most control in that fashion. I'm going to be going backwards. This thing's going to have an opportunity to kick back at me. So at all times I need to be conscious and conscientious of when it kicks back, not if it kicks back, where my fingers are, where my body is. I'm in pretty good control of this thing, but I just have to remain focused. It's a small little saw. It's not making a very deep cut, but even this basswood is harder than the flesh on my fingers. Still have 10. I want to keep them. So here we go. I'm going to make a little test cut here on a piece of scrap. Maybe a hair thicker than I want it to be. I don't know if you can see that. I'm going to bend it a little bit. It's not, now this is a piece of maple, not a piece of basswood. But I'm going to bend it a little bit. Yeah, it took a little bit of strength to break that. I'm going to go a hair deeper. I might be making it a little bit too delicate right now, but I'm going to go a hair deeper on this. So instead of being on the point of the tooth, I'm going to roll this back and forth until it's sitting on two teeth, and that'll drop it down just a couple of thousandths. Let's try that again. Not rocket science, this is all just kind of feel. Liking that a little bit better. I don't know if you guys can see the difference between this and the last cut. I'm going to give it a little bit of tension on here, and yeah, I can break it, but it still feels solid enough. Now, if anything, the cuts that I make here may get a little bit deeper and leave a little bit less under there. If sawdust gets caught under the pieces as I go along, it's going to do nothing but raise it up. So I think I'm set up. I think I'm ready. So I'm going to make my first cut. And I'll take some close-ups here in a little bit, and I might edit them into the middle of this tape. But there's a small pin, an orientation pin or locating pin involved in this jig that will index off of the previous cut. So I need to make the first cut into these kerfs, and then I can index off of that pin. So I'll go ahead and put all of these in, make sure I don't have any extraneous fuzz on them. Probably should have cleaned these up before I did it. 4, oh, 5th one's over here. 5, that's an odd number. Well, that's how many my jig will do. I need 4 for each instrument in these lengths. I'm cutting the 5th, I might need a little bit extra, and I can. So, got the first one going to go in. I'm going to put it right on that indexing pin that I was mentioning. And then I'm just going to eyeball line up the other 4 with it. Make sure they're all sitting flat on the table. This is not a critical cut, as long as I at least get a cut. And if these things will cooperate. Okay. I am trying to make sure that they are flat down on the bottom. And now I'm going to go ahead and set this up again and do a cut all the way through. I'm going to cut all the way back and then go all the way forward again, and that'll clean out the kerf that I just make. Make sure things haven't moved. Okay. So now I've got a kerf cut through all of the pieces. I've got a small piece of wood here that I've already milled up that exactly matches the kerf of this saw. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and it's just a compression fit here. Go ahead. Doesn't want to work when you want it to work. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to lock all of these together. They're not going to move. Now they all move as one. So I'll move to that first pin right there. Now I'm all locked together and I'll make my next cut. And so on and so forth. Now I do need to keep this fairly dust free here. I'm going to turn the camera off now, set up a little dust collection just to try to keep my environment clean and nice here. I'll be turning the fan on in the window, I guess you can't see it, just to make sure that my breathing space is nice and clean. And I'll see you guys in a little bit. And there you have it, all kerfed and ready for installation. I hope this helped some of you. I hope you enjoyed it. Happy building, and take care.